I want to recap yesterday. Can anybody tell me what the 3 L's of real estate? We were talking about that triangle. It's okay to cheat. You can kind of look back at your notes. What were the 3 L's of real estate that we talked about, the principles of that listing mindset? Anybody want to throw it out, unmute themselves as we warm up?
One of them was
What was it?
leverage. One of them was leverage, listing,
Yeah.
leverage leads.
Yeah, so it's that triangle at the bottom, right? So if you're referencing your workbook, it's on page 4, right? The base of our business is always leads, right? We don't have leads. We don't have income. We don't have really a job, right? We're in the unemployment line, right? And then to the left is listings, and then to the right is leverage, right? And if you remember, it's leverage of people, leverage of systems, and then leverage of technology. So great job, yeah. And then the next one that I kind of wanted to drive home is, did everybody have fun kind of diving into that market data? Did you find it easily? Did you go into CBR MLS and did you find what I was showing you guys on the screen yesterday? Did anybody have any trouble with that? I'm happy to jump back over if you're struggling with that. Did everybody find that? I know a lot of people turned in their market data report, but you guys were good with that?
Yeah, I was good with that part, with finding it, you know, once you actually walked us through it, it was easier for me at that point, but I've struggled with it before.
But I'd like for you guys to, now that you know where it is, kind of put that on your schedule, not kind of, put that on your schedule, at least a monthly review of your numbers. What we put in our schedule is market of the moment. So every about the 15th to 17th of the month in my schedule, I pop in there. I look at it for anywhere between 15 to 20 minutes. I just want to make sure if you're going to be listing specialists that you know the market data really well, and it just kind of rolls off your tongue when you're in conversation. So make sure you know that market data. And then our number one highest percent of leads comes from our sphere of influence. Does anybody remember the percentage of what the leads come from?
Was it 48 or 46?
46.
48%. So almost half of your business on the listing side. If you're saying, hey, how do I get listings? You really need to dive into that sphere of influence. Almost half of your business is going to come from that. And so a lot of people think that when their sphere of influence is giving them buyers, that's all they have. Again, like what we talked about yesterday, it's changing that narrative, changing the dialogue, asking them if they want to buy, sell, or invest. You know, be very specific. You get what you ask for. Make sure you're asking them for listings specifically, right? And then does everybody remember ABC, right? The quality of the lead ranking. And then there was 3 circles that we worked through. It's on page 10. Does everybody know it was ready, blank, and blank? What were the other 2 that, that we need to make sure we're qualifying our seller leads with?
Ready, able, and willing.
Yes, absolutely. And a lot of us, you know, guilty as charged. We see somebody that's ready. They say, yes, I'm ready to sell. And yet, are they willing to do what they need to do to get the condition of the property or price it correctly? And then are they able to do so financially or move to the next spot, right? And then we talked about those closing dialogues. One of the ones that I was talking to you guys about, do you guys remember those? Those are on page 13. Does anybody remember those at all?
Oh, what page was on again? Closing dialogues.
It's on 13. Closing for that appointment, which we're going to transition to the physical appointment today.
Oh, yeah, the hard, direct, yeah, tie down, take back. Right, okay.
Yeah, so that tie down is a common one. Wouldn't it make sense for us to meet to discuss the selling process further, right? So nothing, you know, too scripted. We don't want you robotic. But asking for the order is super important as you're going through that, right? So. Okay, perfect. And then we talked about that pipeline versus database. We talked about the Google form. Did anybody play around with the Google forms at all? Like Google to see if they can get their seller questionnaire started? I know a couple of you said that you were not exactly, you know, 100% proficient with Google, but have you guys played with that at all? Anybody? I know that was on a couple of your guys' 48-hour action plan. And so I'd challenge you to do that. And if you need help with it, just reach out to me and I'm happy to go offline with you and help you with those Google forms. They're a lot easier than you think. So don't let it intimidate you. And then the final thing is our homework, the CMA. I gave you the wrong address. Did you guys realize that? Did you guys realize I forgot a 2? So it was 12224 Valley Brook. So I did send out an email. So I got about 8 of you guys turned in that CMA, and you guys did a great job. If there's more of you that want to get a practice running of a CMA, I'd happy to, do that today. And if you want to send it over no later than tomorrow. And remember, I'll then email you a direct link to that pre-listing packet that we talked about yesterday, right? Well, let's dive into the material today. Any other questions before we kind of move on? Any clarification of yesterday as we're kind of rolling through some of the material? We're good? And I have the chat up if you guys need to, but we're kind of ready to roll on to the next one. So if you guys are in your workbook, we're in chapter 4. We talked about, getting the leads, how do we actually cultivate those leads, and then set ourselves up for the appointment. Today, we're going to talk about the physical listing appointment itself, and then how we negotiate our way to the finish line, which is the closing table and commission to get paid, right? So that's kind of what we're going to get out of today. I will give you a listing presentation sample. It's also in Canva, so I will email that to you guys so you can customize it if you don't have a listing presentation. And we'll also talk about some foundation level principles and also how to market your listings as well. The goal is to how to build a seller business to attract referrals, right? At the end of the day, we want to keep what I said yesterday, squeeze all that lemon juice out of the lemon, right? Squeeze it for all the listing leads we can. So the first thing, and I know this is crazy, but judge a book by its cover. How you present yourself is is just as important as far as what you say. So I know you all are rock stars and you guys dress to impress, but I want to just kind of recap and make sure that we're kind of on the same page there, right? So if you're kind of rolling into page 23, a little bit of fill in the blank there. It's basically sellers hire professional. I would like for you guys to really think about professionals dress about 10 to 20% above their audience, right? So I don't want necessarily that, I wouldn't coach you to go to a listing appointment wearing a tuxedo, but throwing a sport coat on is not a bad thing for gentlemen, right? And ladies, same as well. I want you to be a little bit elevated above that. I've had a couple situations in my coaching throughout the years where they didn't get the appointment. And I asked, what did you wear? And he was like, I was just wearing flip-flops and a polo shirt. And I said, well, do you think that influenced that decision? That may not be articulated on why they did not choose you, but I will tell you people do look at the exterior of that. And so make sure you're kind of dressing professionally. The next one is showing up early, right? Some people specifically, when you're being interviewed on the seller side, really the punctuality is a make or break situation. So make sure that you're there early. It seems obvious, but realtors were notorious for being late. So if we're going to be late, it needs to be on something other than a listing appointment. And then also the final thing is make sure you're taking notes. I literally use a cheap notebook and I carry it around everywhere, but I constantly want to take notes for a couple reasons. Number one, I want to start writing down some of the words they're using because we'll talk about in a little bit what we call keyword backtracking, where you're actually going to take their physical words and articulate them back. And so some people talk really fast, right? So if you're taking notes, you can jot as much down. And then also make sure you're going for an agreement, right? And either a written agreement or a verbal agreement to go to the next step. So make sure you have your paperwork with you. I see so many times where an agent does a two-step process, and then before they get to the physical signing of the listing agreement, they actually, the seller changes their mind and lists with someone else, right? So make sure you're doing that. Yes, sure, I got yours from the fax machine. You're good to go. Yes. All right, so let's go into the physical. This is a coaching model, and the reason why I want to bring this model up is because sometimes I think we don't ask enough questions in our listing presentation. In fact, I know that I don't ask a lot of questions originally in my listing presentation. So there's a simple model that I want you guys to go to, and it's page 23. And I learned this model as a coach about 6-7 years ago. And I wish someone had told me this because it's super simple, right? So the acronym is GROW, G-R-O-W, and it's just a conversation dialogue to make sure that you're going deep enough into the conversation that number one, that they understand that you care. You're really trying to be that consultant versus the salesperson. But the other thing is you're pulling out information that they won't naturally give you, right? So I'll give a simple example. If you say, hey, how are you doing today? 95% of the world would say, I'm fine, right? That's a superficial answer, right? And when we're on listing appointments, we ask questions that give a superficial answer to us and lead us down the wrong path. And they always say buyers are liars. And I always say sellers are suspect. So sellers don't tell us everything, right? They just don't. And whether it's an omission or a lie or they're forgetful, either way, when you start to realize some of the things that they're going through, you're knee deep in the transaction. Have you guys experienced that with sellers where they didn't tell you some things, right? So let me give you an example with GROW. So goal, reality, obstacle, will forward. So something as simple as when you sit down with the listing appointment is go over what their goals are, right? When's the time frame in which you need to get this sold? What is the price that you think is the dead set lowest or highest price that you're considering? What do you think that you need to do to the house without even me walking through the house yet, that you know is like a honey-do list that you think you need to get done in order for us to make sure this house is put on the market on the highest level, right? So identify some questions, write them down on a piece of paper, let them see those questions, that's fine. And you can just say, hey, I've written down some questions I want to make sure we get through. But you need to realize your goal and their goal may not align, and you need to get that alignment real quick, right? Reality is more of a gut check for you. Are they in reality with what's really going on in the market? Are they in reality with what you expect from them and what they expect from you? Asking questions about, what is the reality of you getting all the carpets replaced in a week? Do we have somebody lined up to replace the carpets? Well, if not, we may have to push back photography, right? And then the obstacles, right? This is something that real estate agents, we often don't talk about because it's saying that we can't do our job. So what I mean by this is, what's our plan B if the house doesn't sell? And they're like, what? What do you mean? I'm hiring you to sell your house, right? We call that as a pattern interrupt. We're saying, what is your plan B if this doesn't sell? And they're like, well, it has to sell. Like I'm relocating to Texas. I have to get it sold, right? Well, that's good. We need to hear that. Or if they say, I don't have to sell it, I'll just still live in it. Or I don't have to sell it, I'll just rent it out, right? That's okay. We're not concerned with what the obstacle is. We want to hear what they think the obstacle is because everybody has a plan B, whether they say it out loud or not. And we want to hear what that is, right? What if we go on the market and we don't get that 500 that you want? Well, I'll just take it off the market. All right, well, you need to know that now because you're investing in money and investment in time in this property. And if you're already feeling like it's at the top of the market and they're going to bail that quickly, then you need to start tackling that obstacle. And then will forward is just like, well, what's the plan forward? What do we need? What's the next step for us to get your house ready for the market? Or what's the next step in order for us to prevent it from not selling at the 500 that you need? What is your takeaway from GROW? Do you guys feel like you do that already in your conversations with your people? Or do you feel like you're kind of a random with your questions as you go through? Honest, it's all good. How do you feel like you do when you're asking questions on the listing appointment? I'm going to show up and let you guys talk a little bit.
Well, for me, I've only had one. And I was definitely feeling myself through it.
Yeah.
I did have a little bit of a script, a video through like the Brian Buffini training that I did before where they kind of, get them, kind of protect your commission, type of thing, putting
Right.
that out front, what it is that's all involved in basically preparing them for what your duties are, you know, for them and some of the possibilities of what can happen. So I just kind of took cues from that, but I was really uncomfortable because I didn't have really much of anything else to compare it to and no real checklist to kind of go by, so to speak. So this right here, it's helpful.
Right? I think the great thing is regardless of your experience level, you can go into an appointment and ask a lot of questions and they think you have a lot of experience, right? Because if you're asking the questions, they won't be asking you questions, to be honest, right? Most people that if we're new to the environment or new to an industry, we're just always afraid of looking stupid. Like we are, that's just human nature. So if you're in control and you're actually asking them questions, they're busy talking. They're not busy thinking of their own questions. So I would say their first is using this GROW model as a way, almost as a defense mechanism for that maybe lack of confidence that you're feeling early on in listings, right? But again, the ultimate goal of GROW is to get them to tell you things that they wouldn't normally tell you, right? We all have these little small skeletons in our closet. Our job as the consultant, especially on the listing side, is for them to tell it to us. We're their priest. We like no judgment. Tell me all your stuff. Are you okay with your payments? Are you running behind on that? Are you about to lose your, like, let me help you, because we can't help them get where they want to go unless we have the information and knowledge, right? So the last thing on this screen is what we call, these are specific types of questions. I have a whole class that I teach on how to ask better questions. There's actually 16 different kind of quadrants on questions. But the first one, the reason why I bring this up is because permission questions, especially with a stranger, you don't know who they are, is basically telling them that you're not judging them and you're in curiosity, right? So before you even launch into your presentation or your questions, you can say, hey, may I ask you a question? Or maybe they're talking a little bit and you say, hey, may I make a suggestion if you don't mind? I have a little bit of experience with that. Do you mind if I share that with you? When you hear people using those type of questions, either subconsciously or consciously, they're doing it because they're trying to tell you, like, I'm not here to hurt you and I'm not here to judge you. And we all know there's plenty of people in the world that judge us by what we say, what we do, and what we look like. And you as a consultant want to get all that off that table. You don't want to be in that position, right? No one wants to be preached to. So I challenge you, before you launch into any sequence of conversation with your sellers, just get in that permission question and say, hey, may I ask you a few more questions? Or may I dive a little deeper into some of the answers that you provided me on your questionnaire? They're like, yeah, sure, right? No one's really gonna say, no, I'm not answering your questions, right? And then keyword backtracking, that's what I was talking about before, is taking those notes and using their words, right? So one of the questions I love about a seller is like, when you guys bought this house 6 years ago, what was what you loved about this house? What made you write an offer yourself back when you bought this 6 years ago? When they start telling me why they love that house, I start writing those words down, right? So I love the open floor plan. I love the large backyard, all right? And then I'm going to use their words, the large backyard, as an indicator, right? Right. So you just mentioned that you love the backyard, but honestly, there's some landscaping we need to do. So I want the buyer to love the backyard just as much as you do. What can we do to spruce up the backyard so that second buyer falls in love with the backyard just like you did? I just use their words. Keyword backtracking is using it almost against them. It ultimately is for them, but it's using it. You can't argue with yourself, or if you do, you don't get very far. And then switch costs is the last one. I always think of it like door number 1, door number 2, right? So you go through that and say, all right, well, I would suggest, based on the market data, that we list your property at $350. And I know in discussion, you just said you really want to try for $375. So we kind of have to make a decision here. If we go at $350, I think we can probably get an escalation clause, multiple offers. We may get in the 370s, which is our first kind of strategy or option. Or we could go at $375 that you suggested, but we could stagnate the market, limit showings, and actually have to do a price decrease about 10 or 15%. Which one do you think is going to be more beneficial financially to you so you guys can get to the next house? You see what I just did there? I gave them the choice. I didn't tell them that, what are you, an idiot? Right? I gave them choices. Humans, especially adults, especially dominant personalities, like a choice. No one likes to be told what to do. So switch cost is great, right? And you never want to make the decision for them, because if one of those decisions doesn't work out and you're the one that told them to do it, guess who they're going to blame, right? So come into this, I want you to think about this, we're at the listing presentation part, is completely just this flowing conversation about good quality questions. And the other thing is, I want it to be repeatable. The questions you ask at one listing appointment should be the same questions you ask at the second listing appointment and the third, right? That's called a model, right? In order for us to be consistently high producing listing machines, like we're talking about, we've got to make sure that we're consistently asking the same questions. So get those questions written down, typed out, put it on a questionnaire form for yourself, but be consistent. And use these, you know, maybe do it in a way so they don't notice, but prompt yourself. What's a permission question? What's a keyword backtrack question I could add? What's a switch cost? These are psychological. These are actually from many years of psychology. These are not Drew came up with these. These are proven methods and systems in consulting people to make good decisions. And this is from selling houses to staying in marriages, right? These questions are used just to kind of work through human nature. So the next thing we want to talk about is tone. Have you ever had a spouse or a partner say something to you and it's just the way that they said it pissed you off? I don't see anybody shaking their head. Is my wife the only one that pisses me off? All right. So we know tone is a big deal. In fact, in communication, words are about 7%, but how you communicate those words are the most important. And so kind of my original, when you coach with someone, they're like, here's the script. I don't go that route because honestly, I don't care what you say, it's how you say it, right? I could tell you the same script, all of y'all, and if one person says it with a different tone, it'll piss somebody off and turn them off, and they won't even listen, right? So why is tone so important, and how do we know how it rolls with each people? Because you could say something to me and it may not piss me off, but you say the same thing to, you know, to Sherry and she's like, oh, hell no, Mark, you know, like, right? The reason is our DISC. Have you ever heard of DISC before? It's a personality assessment profile. Anybody? Yes, no?
Yes.
You have? Have you taken one? I'm curious what yours is, or if anybody has, what theirs is.
Yeah. I think I fell within the IC range.
I see. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So if you haven't taken it yet, Tony Robbins has a free one, and I like the word free. So when you go to tonyrobbins.com, on the bottom, it has DISC, and you can take this DISC assessment, and he'll email it to you, and then he'll try to get you to, you know, buy some coaching with him, which is, I appreciate that. But it's a DISC assessment. The reason why I coach to the DISC so much is because you need to start to learn people's behaviors as quickly as possible, especially on a listing appointment. Because most of us don't go on listing appointments with people we know all the time. And so the minute I step through the threshold of their door, this is their domain, this is not my domain. And I've got to respect that, and I got to flex into their personality. So I'm going to briefly go over this. Again, there's a whole other class we could take on it, but I would challenge you guys to take the DISC assessment, Tony Robbins again, and just read it. It talks about your motivators, what makes you happy, what makes you sad, and it's about a 20-minute test, and it's creepy how accurate it is. Like, I don't know how they can 20-minute you answer a question test and get like they're like my mom. They like know me inside out. It's weird. So the D is for dominance. So if you're on a listing appointment and that person is talking fast and wants to lead the conversation, that he or she is a dominant personality. They're going to lead with one or two of the indicators. We usually don't have all four that are leading, right? So a D. An I is influencer. These are a little bit more bubbly. Actually, not a little bit. They're high I's. They're super social, super high emotion on that vector scale. So if they're like, oh my God, I love your shirt. Oh, that's beautiful. Like, come on in. Like, they're super high energy people. You know those people, right? They're a high I. An S and a C. An S is a steady person. They're a little bit slower paced as far as their communication. You'll ask them a question, they'll think about it, and then they'll answer. So you sometimes go, did they hear me? Like, what? They're processing what you're doing, and it's a great thing. They avoid change, so they don't want to make a decision until they have all the information. And then a conscientious person, the high C, is a reserved, very analytical person. There, when you're doing the CMA, they're going to look at all of your numbers, and they're going to be like, yeah, I don't think that number's correct. Oh, you know what? They're also super analytical with spelling. I'm not great with spelling. I spell stuff wrong, and they're like the first one to circle. Well, you spelled that wrong. I'm like, shit, right? They're very, very particular. So I am a DI. My wife is an IS. You are usually in a romantic relationship attracted to an opposite personality. That's that concept of that yin and yang. And I've also, when I coach people in real estate, they tend to attract the opposite personality as well. You think we attract like-minded and like-kind, but we don't. So I'm a high D and an I, so I'm very fast, and I'm really animated and emotional, and I'm excited easily, right? That's that DI. I attract an SC. An SC is very systematic, very compliant, very cautious. Probably why I got into coaching, because more people want to kind of be in more system-based than others. So has anybody ever had any interactions with this that they've had an experience where you didn't know how to adapt to them? They were just all over the place. Anybody have anything like that? Well, the first thing I'm going to tell you is that really make sure that you start slow with that person, right? Even if they're high D, like, because you're trying to absorb that information, and make sure you're drilling down to what they want to talk about at the pace that they want to talk about. If you start your listing presentation and he or she's a high D and you're going slower, you're going to need to pick up the speed. In fact, a lot of times when I'm dealing with a high D, I don't even go over my whole presentation. I just skip it, because he or she's going like, come on, dude, like, go faster. So again, we want to be able to be flexible. We want you to have a presentation, but we don't want you to bore them to death if they're a high D or a high I, because they're not going to want to hear all that. The SCs will, because they're going to hear everything you offer and every letter of the law of what you say, okay? All right, so let's kind of jump into like 25, 26 is the worksheet pages we'll kind of work off. I want you to always remember that you're in that human experience, right? Make eye contact. Like I said, go slowly. Using their names is huge. I don't think we give that enough credit. If there's studies that say if you use a person's name at least 3 times in a conversation, they're more likely to remember who you are, right? Cleta, you're saying that, right? Because we're listening to them. We're absorbing that information. So if you're on the phone, if you're face-to-face, if you can grab their name, that's why I put it in a notebook, right? And, a lot of times we'll kind of use a slang like, my wife is a nurse, blah, blah, blah. And then I'll pause and say, what's your wife's name, right? Because they don't say her name. And they're like, okay, Kim. I write down the word Kim. And then when I'm further in the listing presentation, I said, well, you and Kim, because I'm now embedding his wife in there, I know emotionally he's connected to his wife. That's a psychological decision I'm making. It's strategic and it's systematic, right? So using their names is important. You get to use their kids and their animals, good, you got it, right? When you're in an appointment and you can say, when we sell this property and you move to your next dream home, and you can take Sally and Susie with you, and also the 2 cats, Rover and Ralph, with you, how great will that be, right? Putting some emotion into the connection of moving them to the next step, right? Rather than saying, oh, won't you be excited when you're moving to your family to the next house? There's a detach when we say family versus the names itself. Visual presentation, you've got to have a slick presentation. We all have this shiny object syndrome. If you don't have something visually pleasing, and it doesn't have to have 1,000 words on it, big pictures, we don't absorb at a high level when you're doing a presentation, so keep it simple. Look at your listing presentations and make sure they're not very heavy text. They got a lot of visuals because people like that. Other visuals I want you to think about, I'm going to show you on the screen if you can see me, is I want you to have things they can touch and feel. I want you to have samples of postcards, samples of brochures, things like that. When you're at the listing presentation and you got this itty bitty like PNG on your presentation, that ain't cutting it. I want you to have really nice stuff where you can have them touch it because it's using all 5 senses. And you're gonna say, well, Drew, I've never had a listing. I don't have these nice things. Go make them. My first 3 to 4 listings, I showed them fake listing. This wasn't a real house. This one's a little rough. This one looks like more like California, so don't use that. But grab brochures, create them, have 2 or 3 printed. And then when you actually do have listings, save some of them. I have a file folder and just save them for the last ones. I will tell you, sometimes based on the price point of the house, I'm strategic with what I'm showing them. If I'm in a $500,000 house, I'm going to show them a $500,000 house for sure. If I'm in a $150,000, $200,000 house and I show them a $500,000 brochure, they're going to be like, yeah, but my house don't look like that. Like, that's not going to work, right? So have some variety, but visual and using the senses makes a big difference, and you're separating yourself from the competition. So make sure you have some visual aids ahead of you. And no excuse, don't just create some if you don't have some. Or borrow ask one of your agents at ICON, hey, can I take your brochure and change my photo out? Like, help each other out, right? But have some visual aids for that. And then make sure you don't get in the trap if you're on the appointment that they talk about another realtor. We're all in the same industry. We all need to play nice in the sandbox. Now, I will say that there is a scripting or a dialogue that you can use if they're mentioning a team versus a solo agent. So I've been on a listing appointment myself, and I was a solo agent, and they're like, well, and I said, are you interviewing other agents? Which I think is a question you should ask. Do not chicken out. You should. People shop. I mean, that's good. It's all good. So, hey, are you interviewing other agents? They said yes. I said, I'm curious, I may know them. I have respect for a lot of agents in our industry. What is their name? They said ABC team. I knew right then I'm a solo agent and that person's a team. So I didn't disparage that or that person, but what I did say is, awesome, I'm so glad that you are interviewing other agents. I love that people do their homework and shop. I think that's important. I will tell you the difference between a team versus a solo agent is that my 100% focus is to sell your property, not the other 25 or 30 that I may have on my roster. I also do believe in a personal touch, and that I'm an agent that's going to touch every piece of the transaction, not pass it off to another teammate. That wasn't disparaging per se to the actual individual, but is it causing a little bit of doubt that, do I want this high quality service, right? Now, if I'm flipped and I'm on a team, I'm going to say the opposite. I'm going to say, oh, awesome. Yeah, that agent's great. One of the values as a team is that we really have high quality. We have a lot of eyes looking on things. So we make sure everything is detail oriented, and that as a collective team, we get you to the finish line faster with less stress, right? I'm selling the fact that now I have 6, 7 people on my team, and that's a better quality for that product. So make sure you don't use disparaging comments, but you can counteract what your competition is doing, right? And then the last thing, when you're really going through this process of the listing appointment, you need to practice your listing presentation. I will tell you, I have my clients record their listing presentations. And then I want them to play it back. Think about a football team. Think about them at the Super Bowl, right? They're the best that they possibly could be, the most elite athletes. Yet the team, after the Super Bowl is over, after the party is over, after they go back in the locker room, they watch the game footage. They watch the ability or the skills of what they did well, and they also look at the ability and the skills that they did not perform at the highest. And they also realize that the plays or the plan that they thought they were going to do maybe didn't work at that moment, right? So I would challenge you on your listing appointments is to record yourself. It's only for you. You're not going to publish anywhere. Take your iPhone out, hit the record button, stick it on the table, and then when you're done, listen to it. Don't have to share it with anyone else. But what questions did you ask? When they asked you a question, how did you answer the question? That game footage is gold. That game footage is allowing you to be better skilled at your game, right? Does anybody disagree? Does anybody have anything to add with that you think that would connect you better with that listing presentation? Anything else before we keep going? Has anybody recorded their listing presentation and played it back? I'm curious about that because I often don't see people doing that. Is anybody going to try that? Anybody going to do it? Raise hand? No? Oh, chickens. I don't see nobody's raising their hand. Am I?
We have a class here that Takia does, and we do that. We've done that.
Okay, good. That's why I love her. She gets you going. All right. So the next thing is let's talk about the tour itself. If you've ever been on a listing appointment, the seller says, hey, let me give you a tour. Have you guys been through that? It's fun. One thing I'll tell you is I figured out real quick that took about another hour of my life away. And then guess what? They didn't always list with me, and I got a tour of this lovely house that now my competitor listed. I'm like, well, that was just great, right? So one of the first things I would tell you to do is if the seller starts the tour, I'd go with the flow, but I'd like for you to lead with an agenda at the beginning. What I'd like for you to say when you walk through the threshold of the door is tell them the agenda. Hey, my goal today, I got 4 things I want to make sure we accomplish, right? So the first thing is I want to get to know you and your needs. Second, I want to give you a deep dive into the marketing and the pricing of your house. And the fourth is that last step is I want to get a tour of the property and I want to take detailed notes of what we're going to put on the marketing brochures and what we're going to put on the MLS description once you sign that listing agreement and hire me. Do you see there was strategic words that I put all the way through? So it's 4 things that I'm going to do. And that's an agenda. You tell them right out the gate. You tell them right when they open the door and say, welcome to my home. Most people, about 9 out of 10 will follow where you lead them. Very few people are like, no, I want to give you a tour first. All right, well, if you do, then we'll go that route. But if you lead them first, they're going to follow where you go. So one thing I would tell you to do is don't sit on the couch. Have you ever sat on the couch at a listing appointment? It's awful. You're like leaned over and you're crazy. And then if they have a small couch, you're like all up on them. And then if it's a spouse or partner, then you're like trying to lean. It's crazy. So I know it seems so foundational, but you're in more control when you're at a literal table, like a dining room or a kitchen table. So that's important. I also say that you need to ask for water. Why would I say such a weird thing? Why do you think I'm going to ask the seller for water? Why would I do that?
Makes you seem personal.
Personal, love that. Yep. Anything else? Any other reasons why?
It kind of gives you an idea of their personality too. You get to see their reaction to you asking the question, and then you also see how they present it to you if they serve it to you or give it to you.
Serve it to you, give it to you. Yeah. So you're starting to learn their disc profile, like who's leading, who's following, right? Anything else?
It's the opportunity to slow down. So if
Slow
you're
down.
up and if you feel yourself getting flustered,
Yes. Yeah.
slow down and for them to respond.
All of the above is absolutely 100% correct. I will tell you, I still get nervous on listing appointments. Maybe not as much as I used to, but the water bottle, the glass of water is like the silver bullet for me, right? I love to talk. And then when I start to see their eyes glaze over, I'm like, oh, shoot, now what am I going to do? I have to stop talking, right? I take the glass of water. Do you hear the silence right there? That's beautiful, beautiful, right? Silence in a listing presentation is golden, right? Because they can start to breathe, you can start to breathe, and you start to connect in a different, more human way. So always ask for water. I'm telling you, it's like the craziest thing, and you start to learn so much about them, right? The other thing psychologically is you're teaching them that you're in control. You're psychologically saying, I'm the man or woman in charge of this meeting, and that's the good lead indicator how that it's going to actually end. Because if you've ever gone on an appointment and then you leave and then you didn't get anything signed and you're like, what the hell just happened? That was kind of exhausting. I didn't really get anything accomplished. And I got to go back to the appointment a second time. I'm not sure even if I got the deal, right? So make sure you're doing those things important. Absolutely. All right. Let's stay on our task here. So I'm going to give you this listing presentation. This is for you guys. It's a slick presentation. I'm pretty happy with it. So let me show you kind of briefly what it'll look like in here. You can switch out, if you've ever used it, switch out your info. Again, there's the goals, right? What I just verbally talked to you about. You could throw in your team. Everybody has a team, right? So throw your broker's face in there. Throw if you have a transaction coordinator. Throw if you have a photographer in there. Everybody has a team. Easy exit listing agreement. I love this. And then it'll work its way through printed materials. But do you see how it's big? Photos, not a lot of words rolling through, right? So one of the things I'll tell you is that to practice this presentation, I use Post-it notes. I print these off and I put 2 or 3 bullets of what I'm going to say on each slide. Think of that like that. Think of it like we'll get to it in a second. Think of it like a teleprompter for the nightly news, right? You think they're talking to you, but they're not talking to you. They're reading the screen. They're reading the prompts, right? When you're learning a listing presentation or a buyer consultation, knowing what the next page is more important than the page you're currently on, right? So using Post-it notes would be an easy way to do it. And then of course, eventually you don't need the Post-it notes and you're not going to use the Post-it notes in front of them, but practice, 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 practice this. I will tell you, if you do what we talked about yesterday in yesterday's session with that pre-listing packet, your marketing plan should only be about 20% of the presentation. And I'll tell you, most agents don't do it that way. Most of it's 80% is the marketing, and then we get to the price. I hate to tell you, but deals don't blow up because of lack of marketing. Deals blow up because of lack of pricing and condition. So why are we spending 80% on the marketing when secretly we know it's all going to sell anyway because the market's crazy? When we should be spending 80% on the evaluation of the pricing, their motivation, condition. We need to talk about that. So my recommendation is to do that pre-listing packet so then you don't have to do that deep, deep, deep dive of marketing, okay? I recommend doing 80-20 in reverse, doing that 20% marketing plan and then do the evaluation process. And we talked about Post-it notes like that news broadcaster system. And when I was coaching new agents, like in a brokerage, they did that together. We broke them apart and we role played and we did that. Like that was a weekly thing. You guys can do that on Zoom. If you guys are not in the office now, get 2 or 3 of you together. One of you is the seller, one of you is the agent, role play it. And the third person is the observer. I personally think you need 3 to role play because the third person needs to just be sitting there listening. Because when you're too busy like talking back to another person, you can't observe your own behavior. So get a Zoom class together where there's just 3 of you. We're going to breakout rooms. Practice your listing presentation. And also don't chicken out. Give them feedback. Say, hey, you did these things great. And you also need to work on these 3 things. Like we don't all want to just hear the rainbow and sunshine. We want to improve and grow as humans and professionals. Okay? All right, so let's talk about presenting the CMA. We do it completely different. I had a question that was sent to me earlier today. First of all, you guys use, I was noticing, is it called RPR is what you guys use a lot of? You guys are using that, is that right? I think that's right. I think I wrote that down. As far as this, RPR is the CMA tool that makes it look attractive, has charts and different things. Is that right? Erica, did you use RPR?
Yes, I use RPR.
So there's all kinds of CMA softwares. The RPR is a good one. I've used Toolkit CMA. Looks a little old school personally to me. And then Cloud CMA. So basically all it, and then Cedar MLS just has one, right? It's blue and it's fine. So generally when you do your CMA, then you pull it into a software and it creates this really nice presentation. And the presentation can get pretty big. It can be 15, 20 pages, like, because you're looking at side-by-side comparisons, you're looking at charts and all that. I would caution you from going too deep into that method, because remembering DISC, if I'm not an analytical person, if I'm not an SC, and you're showing me 6, 7, 12, 15 charts, I'm gonna lose my mind, right? And so be careful about that. But I want you to write this down with CMAs. Logic makes you think, but emotion makes you act. Logic makes you think, but emotion makes you act. It's not written anywhere. I want you to write that part down. Logic in a CMA is the numbers. Emotion in a CMA is the pictures. It is. People buy houses because of the pictures. When you have a buyer, they're on Zillow or whatever their app is, they see the beautiful kitchen, that's what causes them to call you to show the property. Not the price, because the price is a logical decision, right? It's $450, this is the monthly payment, how much is my down payment, right? That's fine, but people buy on emotion. Why do they go to HGTV and they literally do the, the whole thing and they show you all the ripping down the walls and all the beautiful finished products, and then at the end, they say, bought it for $450, sold it for $650, profit, right? That's because they understand that people buy in real estate, they buy based on emotion. So why we present our CMAs on logic drives me crazy, because we mostly should be driven by that. So what I would tell you to do, and what I do with anybody I coach, is that yes, have that data, have it all printed and bound together. But I have these loose leaf. I have them just jabbed in the side of them. This is that 12 photo color brochure that you print off right off of MLS. Has everybody seen this before? It's called the 12 photo. And I have the 3 solds that I'm using as comps for their property. And I have them loosely. So before I crack open a number, I'm going to have these 3 pieces of paper, these 3 properties laid out. And if you're at the kitchen table, perfect. Why you don't do it is you slide all 3 of those in front of you. You have property 1, property 2, property 3, and you have this exact photo right there, right? And then what you're going to do is, like, if you were a buyer and had to buy a house within 24 hours due to being transferred here to Richmond, which one of these 3 would you pick and why? And you pause and you talk about it. Well, this one's they re-renovated the kitchen, and you circle it. Again, people are visual, right? So I'm circling, the brochure is upside down to me, but they're telling me why they would choose that house. Well, I like the exterior. I like the kitchen. I like the hardwood floors, right? What you don't realize is subconsciously that they're now comparing it to their own house. What they're doing is they're going to either talk themselves into it or out of it, that this house, these 3 properties in front of you, are either better than their house, or worse than their house. So then when you move past this process and you then talk about the logic, which is, I think your house is worth $350, and then they say, well, I think it's worth $375, you can pull these back out and say, well, your competition, the house that you said you'd buy if you were a buyer, is priced at X, and it looks like this with granite, hardwood, and XYZ, and your property doesn't have it. So help me understand, if you were that buyer, why you would now flip it and be different when you're the seller. Because at the end of the day, we're trying to attract a buyer, right? Do you see how they have no wiggle room? You've led them down the path that they have to be logical, and because it's built around that emotion. Does that make sense? So I wouldn't coach you to recommend just starting with the CMA spreadsheet. Quick CMA, going through those numbers, the side-by-sides. I love all those Cloud CMA, Toolkit CMAs. RPRs, I think they're beautiful. But be strategic and put this in front of them first. Again, building that emotion versus logic, because that's how we all psychologically work. Have you ever had a property where they've done some lavish extreme upgrades, added a pool, have this huge hardscape in the backyard, have this game room that's like killer, right? Or put just crazy expensive stuff in their house, and now they think they're going to get more money for it, right? Well, I'll use a dialogue called market value versus marketing value, right? So if you have a pool in the backyard, I can market the hell out of that, right? I'm going to say, relax after a hard day of work, dip your toes in the water and relax in the backyard in your own private pool. That's marketing. I can do that. But to get them to pay another $50,000 for your pool isn't going to work. So make sure when you're telling people about the things that they love, about the upgrades they put in their house, they're not diminishing them. We just have to use it in a different way, right? So make sure you're telling the sellers that it's going to set them up for a possible mistake if they're not logical when it comes to that market value versus the marketing value. And if you look on page 27, the definition of market value is there. And I want you to explain that to your sellers, right? Market value, the price the buyer is willing to pay in the given market. One thing I want you guys to highlight and look at the top of page 27 in that gray box, you interpret market value, you do not price homes. I get agents that are highly experienced and like, that house is $350. I'm like, that's not your job. Your job is not to say that it's $350. Your job is to interpret the market and get the seller to agree that $350 is market value. If you're strategic with the way you present your CMA, they're going to come up with that on their own. And if they don't come up with their own and they're arguing, then you haven't dug deep enough into their emotional or logical brain, the psychology of why they think that. Because if the data, if it doesn't add up, it doesn't add up. You can't, I want $1 million for my house. It doesn't mean my house is worth $1 million, right? So you interpret the market data, and how you articulate that interpretation is the difference between a skilled listing agent and an agent that's just taking listings. There's a difference there, right? All right, we're gonna move through this next chapter, then we'll kind of take a quick break, and then I'll pause for any questions. How are we doing? Everybody feel like they're getting some good stuff? All right. So let's talk about seller objections. I am not going to read all of these, but they are all written for you in page 27 on the bottom, because I think part of the mindset of, oh, I don't know about taking listings is I'm afraid if the seller is objecting to something and I don't know what to say. Well, I'll tell you, in 15 years of doing this, sellers probably have about 5 objections. And once you know how to handle them, it's just like, it's like bowling and like the pins. You just knock each objection down by using some logical conversation. So the first one, I need to think about it. So you do this great presentation, you're at the end of it, and they say, I need to think about it. Wah, wah. That's not closing the deal, right? So I understand, I know your concerns about me that you have. Buyers are very active putting in offers. And if you wait, missing that perfect offer will allow you to think about it, right? So you're going to miss an offer if you want to keep thinking about that. I still need to interview other agents. Often I hear that, and there's two reasons. Either I didn't answer a question that was important to you, or you feel obligated to the other appointment. Which is it? I mean, a lot of times, I know my mom, she'll interview everybody just because she feels bad. She don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. Right? But if they know you're the right choice, you can say, well, they're like, well, I do. I feel obligated because my sister recommended a realtor and I'm meeting him today at 4 o'clock. I totally get that. And you know what? I respect him and the industry as a whole. He's probably at his office now doing 4 or 5, 6 hours worth of homework to do that pricing analysis and getting his listing presentation together, and then driving here in his car, and you already have made the decision to list with me. I think it's in good conscience, maybe good to just let him know that you've already made a decision, so he doesn't have to waste his time and energy on it, right? That's something to consider. And I won't go through all these other ones, but I want to go through the last one. If I sell now, where would I move? Right, there's tons of negotiation options right now out there. I was hoping I could get more money, right? We need an agent with more experience. I hear you yet. While experienced agents work with dozens of sellers daily, my focus is selling your home. You want an agent to focus on your home getting top dollar, right? But the biggest one I hear is commission discounts. Y'all, with everything we're talking about these 2 sessions, you guys are worth every daggone penny that you make. Every single penny, right? So the best one that I love, it's a kind of a comparison. It's that switch cost, right? So it says, you can read it in your book. It's the last 2 on page 27. Okay, I'm so glad you asked about that discounted commission. I do love a discount store. I love some TJ Maxx. Yet, you know, and talking about the plan and the pricing that we just talked about, we're going to price yours and market your home like Nordstrom, right? So the quality market attracts the highest profits, so you make the highest amount of money. So no, I can't discount those standard commissions because we're going to have to cut out portions of that marketing. And I know that you and I both believe that marketing at the highest quality is going to get you the most money. And I just don't want to sacrifice cutting some marketing costs to make that happen. Don't you agree? And then the last one, same kind of concept, is so you have another agent telling you to gladly discount their commission. Well, that's concerning. You know why? Because if they're so quick to negotiate their money away, what will they do when they negotiate your money away? Because my job as your consultant is to get you top dollar, is to negotiate the highest value so you can move you and Sarah and your 2 kids to the next property with the highest amount of profit, highest amount of money in your pocket. So if they're giving away their commission, are they gonna give up on your negotiation strategy? Right? There's a million ways to say that, but there's that doubt of, maybe, right? You guys are extremely valuable in this industry, especially on the listing side. All right, let's go to chapter 5. Let's go into marketing your listings because they've signed the contract. They've hired you as the professional listing ninja that you are. And then it sells in 5 minutes, right? Have you seen posts on Facebook? Oh, house sold in 6 hours, 28 offers, right? You know what scares me about that is that you didn't squeeze all the juice out of that listing, right? You didn't get more listing leads. You didn't get any buyer leads. You didn't do open houses, but you're bragging on Facebook. You know what? What feed you today is not going to feed you tomorrow, right? So one of the things I want you to realize is that you need 2 seller leads every single time you list a property. If you list a property and you don't get a lead or get 2 leads from it, you should be pissed off because you haven't invested in that, right? Right? So you still need to communicate to your database the new listing. Okay, yeah, it sold 6 hours ago, but you still need to send out a new listing. They don't know it sold 6 hours ago. They're not set up on buyer portals. They're not checking everything out. Still send it out. It was a new listing. It's sold now, but it was a new listing. Communicate to the world that you were listing. And then the cool thing is that you strategically wait, and then you could put a pending post out there, whether it's on social media or through email through your database. And then one of the best is guess the pricing game, right? Getting people to participate in that ahead of time. The cool part about coming soon is that now it's legal for you guys to advertise it. You know, before, I think it was about a year and a half ago, you couldn't advertise coming soons. Have some fun with it. Pull some other listings out of that, right? And then also make sure you're doing any type of sneak peeks for your listings, right? If they're replacing carpet, go in there as they're ripping out the carpet, right? Show before and after. It's blue and now it's tanned. Do everything. And then circle price we talked about yesterday, using a Mojo, a Vulcan, going in there and calling the neighbors. And then let's talk about open houses seller focus. I talked about it briefly yesterday, but I want to dive a little deeper because honestly, open houses right now are crazy. If you've done one, there's like 65 people and they're like flying through there like a 3-ring circus. I don't know how anybody can get leads right now on an open house because there's so many buyers. There's agents with them. You don't know the difference between an agent and a buyer. Have you guys done an open house lately? It's not even the same. Like, I don't even know I don't think open houses are ever going to be back to quote normal, right? But we need to make sure an open house is about you getting more seller leads. So one of the things that I would coach you to do is calling that neighborhood, and the script is simple. It's not written down, so I want you to listen to it, and hey, this is Drew. I'm sure you saw down the street, we just listed 123 Smith Street. The reason for my call is that I wanted to personally invite you to the open house so you could see inside because the sellers have done some updates, and I'm curious what you think about it. And they're like, well, I'm just a neighbor. Well, one of the reasons why I want you to come is because you have a pulse on your neighborhood. You know the pricing, and you know what a lot of people are doing to upgrade their home. And I want to make sure we're hitting the mark right. Make sure that our pricing's right, and inside it looks the way it should. Again, it's just, even if nothing else, it's just you being a nosy neighbor, it's all good. I just want you to come and give us your perspective. Would you be able to come Tuesday, a Sunday, 2 to 4, right? And then when you're now talking at the open house, only question I'm asking is, oh, are you a neighbor? Oh, are you a neighbor? Oh, right? Because I only want to talk to the neighbors. Like, I want to say, hey, how long have you lived in the neighborhood? 5 years. Guess what? They're time to move because 5 to 7 years is when they move. And I'm going to write that down. And then I'm going to do a handwritten note and say, thanks so much for coming to my open house. Thanks so much for the feedback. Hey, you mentioned you're 5 years in. A lot of people like to cash out on their equity at 5 years or upsize or downsize. I'm happy to give you a free CMA, right? Seller-focused conversations. Also, I have buyer letters. I do a separate off-market class, and I've had literally 9 listings this month just from a buyer letter. It's a simple Word document letter, nothing fancy. I have buyers, this is the reason, and then list the 4 buyers. This is John and Susie, and they're pre-approved at 450 to 500 this school district, and they have 4 of them. If you know anybody that has a seller in your neighborhood or your family that may match with one of my buyers, I'd be happy to talk to you about that. They don't need to list their property. They can pay you the 3% commission, and work with your buyer. That's a FSBO. That's what that is. Right? So have those conversations at your open house. Have a list of your buyers at the open house and say, hey, are you a neighbor? Yes. Hey, well, I'm so glad you came. I have the list of these buyers and I can't find a house. Would you mind if I give you this list? And if you know anybody at work or church or neighborhood, if you know anybody that's living in one of these type of neighborhoods, would you mind having them give me a call to see if we can match make and get their house sold and my buyer get a house at the same time? Be a matchmaker. That's what I want you to think about when you're looking at open houses. And then again, Mojo is what we use. We just pop in the neighborhood search and it pops up their name and their information and their phone number. We pay $50, I think $59 a month for Mojo. It's not expensive, it's month to month. Don't use it 1 month, don't use it. Mojo is cheap if you're just using the neighborhood search option. $59, yeah. All right. So let's talk about marketing enhanced. You've got the listing, you're doing the open houses, you're really trying to get those 2 leads minimum on your listings. Property search websites. Do you guys have software that you guys like to use? Have you ever used property search websites? You guys have any? There's a lot of them out there. So first of all, I think using one is important, right? So I use, and what I coached, because I love it, is Agent Marketing is the name of the platform. And it actually creates cool videos and cool websites. So literally a property website, a single property website. They'll literally take, and it's connected to MLS. So it's not like you have to load all the photos in yourself. But it's a single property website. And what I would do is I'd actually, when the market was not that crazy, when selling 5 minutes, I'd actually get a name writer on the sign, and it would be www.123smithstreet.com. Because people don't use flyer boxes anymore. They're on their mobile phone, right? So I'm a buyer, I'm in front of the house, I'm gonna check it up on Zillow or Realtor.com. But the cool thing about these property websites is they also have links to schools, greatschools.org. They also have it connected to Google Maps so they can see how close it is to the grocery store and the pharmacy. Because remember, we're in the lifestyle, we're in the local economist of choice business. Zillow does, this is the house, this is the kitchen, right? If I'm moving here and I don't know Richmond, I want to see where's my kid's school, how close is it? I can pop it in that same website and I can put my work address and be like, all right, from this address to my work, it's 13 minutes. All right, I could do that commute. So think about enhancing your listings by using property websites. Direct mail. I see a lot of people doing what I call a one touch. They're like, oh, I'm listing a property, I'm gonna send out a just listed postcard. And then they spend $300 and they go, I didn't get any calls out of that. There's no such thing as a one touch. Psychologically, it takes longer, it takes time for us to figure things out. And the reason why is they have what they call the RAS, so the reticular activating system on the back of your brain. Have you ever purchased something and then you saw it out in the world? Like you've purchased a watch or a handbag or a car, and then suddenly, my brother-in-law purchased a Jeep recently, and now he's like, oh my God, everyone owns Jeeps. I'm like, no, they don't. But because his RAS, our RAS is it's built into our DNA, it's built into our brain. Once you show somebody something, they are particles, they start to pick it up. So if you do a one touch, you actually are helping somebody else sell a house, is what happens. They get a postcard from you just listed, just sold. And they're like, oh, wow, they sold that house in 3 days and got that price? That's amazing. They throw it away. Next realtor comes around, 3, 4 realtors come around, they eventually list their house. They're like, why didn't you list with me? You activated their RAS by doing that one touch, but what you didn't do is you didn't stay with them. That makes sense? So if you're gonna invest in postcard direct mail marketing, you need to do the whole shebang. Just listed, pending, sold. You need to invest. I'd rather you go small. If one poster is going to cost you $300, $400, I'd rather you go shrink it down to $150 for the first postcard, do a pending postcard for another $150, and invest another $150 and sold. Shrink it down from maybe 400 houses to 150 houses, right? I'd rather you do 3 shots at a direct mail than just doing one and done, because no one buys based on one ad. You've all done it on social media, Facebook ads. You see it one time, you're like, oh, that's cute, yeah, whatever. You see it again, oh, that's kind of cute, click on it. You're like, man, okay, I probably should buy that. And you click on it. We don't buy things on the first run. It's just not common nature, and it's not human nature when you're buying and selling houses. Door knocking, I'm a big fan of it. I think with COVID, be careful. I think just maybe a door hanger. I don't know that I would knock on the door. I think it's important. I think it's a way to show that you're willing to do things that you wouldn't normally do. But make sure you're respectful of solicitation policies and county regulations, because we don't want to get you in trouble with that. But I definitely have people do it, and they do a great job, and they love it. Social media posts, make sure you're going into those classified groups. You need to be friends with, you don't just post it in real estate stuff. If you can post it in Chesterfield classifieds, Henrico classifieds, if you can post it in other groups, that's important, because if you're posting it in these big real estate social media groups, they're seeing hundreds of houses flip through their feed. Yours isn't standing out. Find the unique ones, find the neighborhood ones. Again, social media closed groups have rules, so make sure you're abiding by them, but find the hidden gems, because you, again, like we talked about yesterday, you need to be that purple cow. You need to stand out with your listings, right? Anybody using Nextdoor at a high level? Anybody? Let me scroll through. Anybody rolling through that? They don't really allow you to, I mean, unless maybe something's changed, they don't allow you to do a high level of posting about your listings. Where I use it is I'm a vendor king. Like in my neighborhood, I'm constantly, somebody's like, hey, I need a yard guy. I'm like, I got one. Hey, I need, my house power washed. I got one, right? And I'm constantly putting, and oh, by the way, when I say I got one, Drew Demery Real Estate at XYZ Brokerage, right? I'm telling them that I got you, but I'm also a real estate agent, right? Because on Nextdoor, the beauty of that is if people are sprucing up their house, if people are power washing, mulch, paint, carpet, something happened. Something's going on. They're either going to rent it out, they're going to sell it, they're flipping it, something's going on. And if you can get ahead of that and be a seat at the table at the listing appointment, that's a whole nother ball of wax. So, and I even have a couple agents that invest in sponsoring Nextdoor. There's just like anything like Facebook ads, Nextdoor has a sponsor option. All right, so if your house doesn't sell, first of all, if your house is not selling in this market, we got a few things we got to work through. But most often it's price and condition, right? So one of the things I will tell you is that you got to be careful that you're honest with them at the beginning. So if you're kind of rolling into the workbook on page 30, make sure you're honest and full communication with your seller from day one, right? If you're going to ask them for a price reduction, they should not be surprised by that. We're going to talk about that a little bit more deeper, but I want you to realize that that's important. Condition. Don't gloss over it, right? If you decided, hey, we just can't financially, clean the carpets or rip out the carpets, all right, but that may affect things. It's going to come back up if we get feedback. I think people that are heavy listing agents are okay with conflict. Sellers don't do always what you tell them to do at first. And then I call it rinse and repeat. You keep saying it and you keep showing them. And then you set it's, and feedback, right? When they get showing times, you're like, hey, they said the carpet doesn't look good. Remember we talked about at the listing appointment, you said you didn't have the money to fix it. I get that, but it keeps coming up on the feedback. So what are we gonna do? What's our plan B if we don't get the house sold, you don't have the money to get the carpets replaced or cleaned, and we keep getting this feedback? What's gonna happen here? Right? So just set that proper expectation with the seller and make sure you're adequately doing that. And as you work your way through, and then make sure you're marketing the best features. That's why I always ask the question, why did you buy this house? When you bought this house 6 years ago, why did you buy this house? Because most likely the person that lives in the house, that's the reason why the next person's gonna like that house. I love because of the private backyard. I love because the deck is large. Guess what? All those features need to be put in there because that's what triggered that first buyer to buy it. And most likely we're creatures that we're gonna do the same thing, okay? Do you see this here though? It says, if you have 10 showings or 7 to 14 days on the market and no offers, we need to do a market correction. On the listing agreement, we talked about this yesterday, but make sure you're bringing that up, right? So again, you listed at 375, even though you think it's worth 350, right? Take the listing. In the event we don't have 10 showings or 14 days on the market with any offers, we're gonna do a price correction of $10,000. Well, guess what you're gonna do? You're gonna be counting to them, rinse and repeat, right? You're gonna say, hey, we have a showing today at 3 o'clock. Awesome. This is our 10th showing. I'm doing that on purpose. Because guess what? When tomorrow we have another showing, I'm going to say, hey, we have another showing tomorrow with a different agent at 6 o'clock tomorrow. This is the 11th showing. Remember we talked about what we wrote into the listing agreement? So I'm going to do that price reduction today so we can get in preparation for the showing tomorrow. Well, no, I want to wait till after the showing tomorrow. All right, well, if we get to the 11th showing and they don't write it, we're just chasing that snowball down the hill. We need to get ahead of it like we agreed to in the listing agreement, right? So stick to that cadence, stick to that accountability, because seller's the first one to go get a little brain fog. What? I don't remember signing that. Well, I can show you that you signed it, right? All right. Also, the biggest thing when you're negotiating, we're not even into an offer phase yet, you're negotiating with your sellers most times. That's 90% of the listing challenge is negotiating with your sellers. We talked about being honest, but one of the first strategies I want you to make sure you're aware of and that you do is, do you guys set up a portal search, MLS portal search for yourself on your own listings? Do it. Makes you look like a rock star. Because nothing is more embarrassing than your seller calling you or texting you and saying, oh my God, the house down the street listed 20,000 less than our listing. And in the back of your head going, shit, I didn't see that. I didn't know there was even a new listing, right? So set yourself up on your own MLS portal. I do, 123 Smith Street neighborhood search. So when it sends me an email, I know what that is, right? So then you're educating yourself on that neighborhood and the search parameters. Because what I would tell you is that lack of communication with your sellers is the number one honest deadly sin of a listing ninja, is you need to make sure you're in constant communication with your sellers. So these are the, if you look at the screen and on your book there, is really important that you confirm a once a week communication with your seller. And it could be email, call, or text, but every seller I have, I will do it religiously, and they will get in a rhythm. If it's been on the market for 2 or 3 weeks, they're getting the same format. They're going to see it. The 4 things that I'm looking at, and this is on page 30 if you're following along your workbook. Weekly update, AKA you're just copying everything from the MLS portal. So don't make it hard for yourself. Your marketing and prospecting efforts, right? I did 16 posts on social media. I did 2 open houses. I sent out 300 postcards, right? What are you doing to market that property? And then the subject property weekly activity, right? That's showing times. This is how many showings we have. This is the feedback. Circling and saying, hey, they said the carpet's not looking good. They said that the deck needs to be replaced, right? And then offering a solution, offering a way forward, giving them, hey, based on the feedback, based on the number of showings, based on our competition, I would advise you do X, Y, Z. You never want to tell somebody a problem without a solution. Think about it. You go into the doctor and you have a stomach ache. You tell him your symptoms, and then he says, all right, well, have a great day. You're like, dude, I came here for a prescription. I came here to make me feel better, right? So be careful on the listing side that we're not telling them the problems without the solution, right? We need the diagnosis with the prescription is what I often coach to. I'm diagnosed your symptoms of X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to give you this pill to fix it. And 9 times out of 10, it's price or condition. That's 9 times out of 10 is the prescription that you need to say. Well, guess what? We need to replace the carpet. We've had it on the market for 2 weeks. We're going to have to do another price reduction. It's $2,000 to replace the carpet. Let's see if we can figure out a way to get that taken care of before the next showing. Okay. All right, so now we're thinking, I want you to think on the other side. Now we're getting offers in. We're kind of working our way towards a ratifying of a purchase agreement towards your listing. Make sure that you're respecting other agents. I hear a lot of crazy stuff going on right now. Agents, sellers, buyers, everybody's getting a little cocky, right? We're all in this together. We're all in the same industry, so make sure we're communicating in an effective way. Make sure you communicate any changes in your market as far as your MLS listing. So if you take something out of the listing, like no offers till Monday at 3 and you change it to noon, make sure you're communicating that, because if you change the rules on the co-op agent, that gets them a little grumpy. And then remember that disc personality. That's probably the most important, right? A lot of real estate agents are a D or an I. Either talk your head off or they're super short. And the super short pisses you off, and the super social means, dude, I don't have time for this, right? So a lot of DI is in that personality profile. So make sure you're understanding what that is and cooperating as best with them so you guys can be somewhat on the same team until you get that ratified contract, and then you're gonna have to go into the sandbox separately, right? Also get a pulse on what's not written. If you're a listing agent, you're reviewing 3 or 4 offers, and you need clarification, call the other agent and be like, you put this in there, why did you do that? You're not countering offering them. You need to hear what their motivation, why did they put that verbiage in there? Because sometimes it's either in there incorrectly, they didn't mean to type it in there, or sometimes there's some hidden agenda that you need to be aware of. So it's completely okay for you to question or be in curiosity of something that's written in an offer if you don't understand why they would put it in. Do you guys use multiple offer worksheets? You guys know what that is? You guys do those? Yes, no?
I do a spreadsheet when I do when I have listings so that I can, compare equally each of the offers for my client.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good for you and it's good for your client. You get 12, 15, 20 offers and it's a stack of paper this big, you don't even know what's going on, right? So I'm going to show you just a simple multiple offer worksheet. It's literally a spreadsheet. But I would say before you're flooding your seller with all these PDF offers, break it apart. Offer one. So if you want to take a screenshot, these are the common, what I call the ingredients to the cake, right? It's not just price. And in fact, most sellers don't pick an offer just on the price. So it's loan type, it's interest rate, I mean, it's down payment, it's if they're asking for closing costs, if they're going to get an appraisal or not, how much money, earnest money deposit, what bank. Some people are very particular, like, hey, I want a local bank, right? If there's an escalation clause, we're going to talk about that in a second, but then you can build it out and say, well, actually, there is an escalation clause, so your offer really, the new offer is going to be 192 or 187, right? I also think knowing the real estate agent, we're in the relationship business just like we are when we're building our referrals. I'll tell my clients, hey, I've worked with Scott before. He's an easy keel, really high quality guy. I feel comfortable working with him. I think that's important because we know emotion, again, logic and emotion are connected, but you got an agent that you know is more emotional, you may be a little skeptical of it. So definitely make sure you're doing that. And then so the last two things with this is understand that you understand what an as-is addendum is. I get all the time that people are like, oh, it's as-is. Well, the as-is addendum clearly says, and it's on highlighted, or it's on page 32, purchaser may terminate the purchase agreement by written notice within the inspection period. They still can get out of the house. So when you see as-is addendums as a seller, you need to make sure you understand that. And also the 10 days is default. I see sometimes where they'll put 14 days on the purchase agreement and they'll put 10 days on the addendum. Well, which one happened, the chicken or the egg? Is it the 14 or is it the 10, right? You're using an as-is addendum, whether it's on the buy side or the sell side. I just want you to make sure you're communicating that correctly with the seller. And then escalation clause. I hope you guys are using them when you can. Has everybody used an escalation clause before?
Yeah, in this market though, what are your thoughts? Because at this point,
it's a crapshoot.
yeah, I was gonna say it's almost like just do your highest and best. Like
it is. It
Right.
absolutely is. But if you only get, if you're getting 20, they're getting 20 offers, then it's going to be. But if they got one or two, I think it just depends on how competitive it is. I agree. It's just funny that when people don't even use them. I think, hey, the escalation clause tells you what the highest is. Like if you're escalating to you're writing offer 350, escalate to 375. I mean, that at least shows you on the buy side, it shows where you're willing to go.
Yeah.
But what I want you to know is if you're representing the seller, you don't have to use an escalation clause, even though it's in there. You can just cross it out and say, all right, you said you want to offer 375. And he's like, no, I offered 350 and I'll escalate it. Well, we're countering at 375. You don't have to take an escalation clause for face value. It's just a tool that the buyer is using. Again, we're talking it on the seller side. You can take it for what you want. You're working on behalf of the seller. All right, so a little pop quiz in the middle of it to kind of liven it up, and then we'll take a break. I want you to think about, there's 5 questions I have about, again, you're representing the seller. And I want you to think about these in a true and false and put them on 33 circle, true or false. You can only ask for highest and best once. Do you think that's true or do you think that's false?
False.
False.
False. Yeah.
If you are on the buy side and it's all about the seller, right?
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, if the offer has a deadline for response, the seller is obligated to respond, right? We see them all the time. It says,
False.
False.
False. They can change it.
We can change it. It's just a suggestion that says in MLS, hey, all offers are, you know, we'll respond to offers Monday at 3 o'clock. They don't have to. They can take an offer before then. So that's false. It pisses off the buyers and the buyer's agent, but it's possible. Seller must sell if the offer is a full price cash with no contingencies.
False.
False.
Right. This is trained well on your contracts. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
All competing offers are confidential and details cannot be shared with any other offers.
Depends on the seller, right?
Stand up.
Mainly I would say false,
It's
but
false because it's not an absolute.
yeah, it's a false.
It is false, and that's because it's a code of ethics thing.
Right.
So you should know the code of ethics, hopefully, right? So code of ethics, there is actually a whole strategy. As long as the seller agrees for you to disclose those offers, you can say, hey, right now we have 6 offers. Your offer is number 4 because you're not at the highest. The highest offer we currently have is $350 with waiving the appraisal. If you go above that, we can see if we can make it happen. Now you have to tell everybody that.
Right.
But I find my father-in-law, Tim Dudley, I don't know, he is in the auction business. That's how auctions work. You know how much the house, so you're on the courthouse steps and he's auctioning a property off and he says $250, the whole audience know that's the highest offer right now. I find it very interesting in traditional real estate that we don't do that.
Right.
We all like keep it a secret. That's a whole psychological weird thing to me.
Wasting a lot of time.
It's wasting a lot of time and they're just pissing people off.
Yep.
And so I just want you to be aware that as long as your seller gives you written permission, you can tell every detail of those offers to every single person. You could send an email and say, this is the highest offer, and blind copy all those agents. May the best man or woman win, right?
That's why you say highest and best.
Yeah. Agent remarks, if the offer is reviewed by X date, is a legal requirement. We talked about that. False. You don't have to not to do that. Good job. Great job. All right. So we have a little bit of, I want to take a 5-minute break and answer any questions. I have just 2 more little slides I want to get through and we'll take a 5-minute break because I'm sure you guys need to grab a drink and we'll finish this up in 30 minutes. So let me get through these last couple slides. Let's talk about the home inspection on the seller side, right? So home inspections on the sellers, we need to make sure we're tracking our deadlines. I highlighted them on the screen there. We don't need to tell the buyer that they're not hitting those deadlines, right? That's not the fiduciary of you as representing the seller. But we also know that 63% of all transactions that fall apart is because of a home inspection.
Yep.
And I don't think, and I coach my agents to make sure the seller understands what that process looks like. So when I'm at a listing appointment, I actually have a sample of a home inspection with me. When they're signing the listing agreement, I grab that and I'm gonna say, hey, we're gonna get you an offer. We're probably gonna get you 10 offers. First thing is, are we selling this as is or are we gonna do a home inspection? A lot of people are gonna say, I wanna do I'll allow a home inspection if they want one. All right, well, I'm gonna show you one. It's probably been a minute since you did your home inspection because you've lived in the house 6 years. This is how big a home inspection is. It's 60 pages, it's big. It's got pictures and show them. I black out the name and we have samples that we just keep steady. It's just like a marketing piece. Remember, it's touch and senses, right? So you're showing them the marketing pieces, but give them a sample of the home inspection. The seller needs to see that. Because if not, when they get that 60-page home inspection from the buyer, they're like, they're nickel and diming me, they're taking all my money. You've all heard it, right? No, this is the size of a home inspection. So prep your seller for a home inspection because their emotion gets all jacked up when they see all of these repair requests. But you know what? Their house is any different than the house down the street because it's the same thing. So just make sure that you know that, and I would definitely say that you provide a sample of one to your sellers and get ahead of it. And then provide them with a repair addendum, a sample one. Like, hey, this is my last home inspection. They asked for 25 things. We ended up negotiating and only got 10 things and we gave them a $2,000 credit. I don't know what's underneath your costs. I don't know what's on your roof, but I want us to be mentally prepared for if we get a good offer for us to still make it a win-win. really cool to get ahead of that rather than dealing with the high emotion when the agent is sending over an offer with that. When you're representing the seller, make sure you realize there's 3 things in that home inspection, right? If you think about it, they have to give you the report, they have to give you a cost of repairs, and the list of what they want you to fix. You don't have that, then you don't have, it's not representative of that purchase agreement the way that it was ratified. I highlighted it in like a yellow, like an orange color for you. It's seller, all inspection reports, cost, repairs, and repair requests. If they had the roof inspected separately, they had the plumbing, whatever. So if you get a repair addendum, but not only like page 6, summary of rights of the inspection, you can go back to the buyer agent and say, I need the full report. I don't need just the summary of rights, the summary of repairs. I want the whole report, right? So full report, cost of all those repairs, cost to cure, right? That's what common terminology we use. Do you see that summary and it doesn't have a cost on there? You're going to say, well, you say you need to replace the deck, but you didn't tell us how much it's going to cost to replace the deck. It's okay to, as the listing agent, to dig into those conversations. It's going to help you negotiate for both parties better and save a deal that's, unfortunately, statistically, is 63% of falling apart based on this daggone home inspection portion of our contract. All right, and then the last kind of thing, just in general negotiation skills, this comes out of a book that's called The Highly Effective Habits of People. I love this book, Stephen Covey. And so if you look at page 35, I want you to fill in those triangles there. You got to work with good people. Let's just keep it real. The seller has to have character. That's the first triangle. Relationship with that seller. And then you need to come to an agreement with that seller, right? Same 3 triangles with the buyer's agent. You need to make sure that obviously you're working with an agent, you as well as that buyer agent, that you have character and relationships with him or her, and you come up with agreements, written agreements, right? Third triangle is written agreements. That's how you create that. And then those last 2, if you look at the bottom, supportive systems, your brokerage is that section, right? It's okay to not know. I'm still learning about things on the seller system that I don't know about. I've been doing this for 15 years. So if you're stuck, use your supportive systems. Go back to your broker, go back to your mentor and say, hey, I got this and I'm working with the seller on this. I'm not exactly sure how to work through that. And then the last thing is that 5th section, if you look on the bottom of that diagram, is a process. You need to be doing the same process with every seller. You need to be asking for the same things, telling them the same things. So come up with some template emails of some things that you're constantly asking them, right? One seller shouldn't get better customer service than the other seller. And I see that all the time where you're not busy, so you've got this amazing customer service, and then suddenly if you have 2 or 3 listings, you're like trying to hold it together with duct tape, right? Systems, right? That's the only way we can make sure we're negotiating to where it's a win-win. So ethical, communication, fiduciary systems, and process. All right, and then the last thing, just to wrap up negotiations, and then we're going to get to take a 5-minute break and we'll do the closing system. Collaborative negotiator or the compliant negotiator or the competitive negotiator. Which one is the one that you think offers the best solution for everybody? Reading the screen.
The collaborating.
Collaborate. Yeah.
Collaborating.
Collaborative.
You guys are very, very smart. Which one do you think is the most common in our industry, especially right now in the market?
Competitive.
Competitive.
Yeah. Can we say ego,
Yeah.
power, control, fear, intimidation, anger, right?
Yep.
So we got to keep our emotions between the lines. We are in control of that. And if we're tired, we may not need to negotiate right now. Might need to go to bed, right? We save it for another day. We've got to be the center one. We've got to be that collaborative one, because there are definitely egos involved right now. This is a tug of war, and the rope is completely on the other side with a lot of situations. Buyers are not have that equal play. So they're feeling the rub. They're feeling the grip of the ego, the power, and the lack of control. And if you're representing the seller, be careful with that. So I would just go, I know you guys have high character, high integrity, you're icons of the community, right? You're those people, but we have to represent our industry in that collaborative nature. And I think some of us miss that in the emotional perspective of the transaction. I want you to make sure you're kind of working through that. And the last thing is just to make sure you're, again, just like when we were doing the listing presentation, you got to ask a lot of questions. Those that ask questions are much better at skilled negotiation. It is okay to call the buyer's agent and be like, what did you mean by this? Well, tell me a little bit more about the buyer. Not the stuff that's written in the document, the stuff that is what causes the transaction to blow up. Emotion, cold feet, transfers that they're not sure about, credit scores that are iffy. Like, we need to, as a listing agent, we need to hear anything that we can get out of that. And the only way we can do it is by asking questions. Test for the understanding. Let me make sure I understand you. That's a good segue when you're talking on the phone or even by text. And then summarizing. If you're having a good conversation, whether by text or phone, is what I heard you saying is your buyer is willing to pay X, Y, Z, right? So do things that are confirming things, because I see a lot of miscommunication when you're negotiating, because a lot of what we're doing in negotiations is verbal, or it's a text. And then 6 lines into the text, they slip something in and you're like, crap, I didn't see that, right? So just always reconfirm some of the information. Always make sure you're putting positive comments in there. You know, thank you so much for your working hard for your client. We're going to get this done. Hey, we look forward to working together. We look forward to closing this transaction for your buyer and my seller, right? You have to have some of that cheerleading mentality, because both of you, especially in this market, we feel beat up. We feel stressed because they feel like the seller or the buyer we're not getting them where they want to go. So kind of help each other work through that. And the last thing I would say out of that whole list is think double. See both sides of the fence, and make sure you're telling your seller or your buyer, whichever you represent, but if we're talking about sellers, make sure you say, well, you know, it's a good offer. If I was a buyer agent, I would have wrote that offer like that. Give some reassurance that you can see the other side of the coin, even though you're working for your fiduciary with this. And so let's take just a 5-minute break. I'm gonna set a timer. You guys grab some something to drink, go to the restroom, and then we'll finish strong and we'll be done for the day. Let me set a timer here. I'm gonna hang out with you guys. I'll unshare the screen. You guys have any particular seller questions that you guys wanna throw at me while we're on this break? All right, start, we're good to go. All right, let me grab something to drink too. How many people do we got on here? We have 18. So we're a little less than yesterday. What happened to our people? Are they listing properties?
Must be. That's the only. I love the collaboration. That's what I actually do. Whether I'm on the buyer side or the selling side, the first thing I put in my email when I send the ratified contract, once everything's ratified, is we're looking for a win-win. You want to get your client out or in. I want to get my client out or in. Let's meet in the middle. And even when things get heated on the inspection, I'm like, look, wait a minute. Let's look at it from both perspectives, and let's just, come to a, and I've had probably 2 agents in 12 years that were just really, really horrible. But for the most part, I'm just putting it up front, saying, hey, we're going in with a win-win, let's work together. I know that you want to do whatever you need to do for your buyer, your seller. I'm going to do the same, but we want to meet in the middle. And because I do that up front, I've had some really good conversations, and, I've built relationships with the agents on the other side. So I really, really love that collaboration, because that's pretty much what I do there. So I love it.
The other thing I love about that, what you're saying, is that the collaboration is there, but they also tell you things that they probably shouldn't tell you. Like,
True.
Because they're so comfortable with you, and you may not use that to do anything malicious or anything bad, but you know where it's coming from. You're like, right. They'll tell you stuff. I mean, I remember they'll say stuff about the person's credit score, their employment, their mom, the buyer, and I'm like, why are you telling me this?
Yeah.
Like, but it's just because you're trying to build enough of a relationship.
Building that rapport.
The rapport.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
Oh, love it, love it.
Good. I love that.
Drew, what get that statistic about the 63% of transactions fall apart because of the home inspection?
Yeah, and that's a NAR number. So NAR says that Out of all
Okay.
the deals that blow up, and I always coach, if you have anything higher than 10% of your deals for the whole year blow up, we got to work on that. So I actually have people track, okay, this deal blew up for whatever reason. But they said out of all the houses that are under contract, if they're going to blow up, it's because 68% of that. So it's a high number.
So not the 63% blow up, it's just that the reason,
No,
the reason would be
whatever
the
was going to blow up,
inspection.
any the reason why it blew up was that.
Okay.
And the other high percent, I think, was in the 34% was financing. I mean, it's just,
Right.
you know, it's either, again, it's all emotion or logic. It's the home inspection freaked me out, I'm out, or home inspection, I don't have the money to fix it, or I lost my job and I don't have any money, you know, so those kind of things. So.
And I like the fact that you actually take a home inspection report. I always, when I do the net sheet, I always put in, you know, anywhere from $2,000 to $4,000, depending on the way the house looks. But I've never taken an actual report to them, so that's actually good to know. I've always said, hey, there's always going to be something wrong with the house. Just like when you get your car inspected, they always find something. It's going to be that way with the house. But I've never taken the report in, so I'm definitely going to take a report, block out what you stated, and take that to them, because
it's dramatic, like slap it on the table, and they go, wow, that thing is thick. I'm like, yeah, this is a home inspection. And pick, no offense, but pick your gnarliest one. Pick one that was rough. Black out the client's information or even the address, but yeah, this was a 75-page home inspection.
I like that. Yeah, I'm definitely going to do that going forward.
I think people, they don't know perspective. I think that's the biggest thing that I want to tell you about through this seller negotiation is they don't have perspective. We do this every day. You know, we look at home inspections, we list and sell properties every day. They sell 1, 2, 5, you know, they don't sell 20 houses a month like we do. So.
Right. I like that.
Awesome. Well, I think we're good to go on time. Let me share screen. Let's finish time. Got 15 minutes and we got a decent amount to cover. What am I doing here? All right, share screen. Sorry, I'm talking to myself. All right, so let's get to the finish line. We're now actually at the process where you've finished everything up. You're actually at the closing table, right? So this is really about more of the client experience where you can get more referrals. This is my favorite part of the whole 2-day event because this is where you get more listings. That's the whole point. You don't want one and done. You want one and more, right? You want to keep going. I think the first thing that I would tell you is that make sure you have reliable vendors for your sellers and of course your buyers. I am a big fan of having a directory. So I was old school. I've always had it like in a nice book, had it professionally bound. It looked like a magazine. And every year we would do an annual vendor book. And so I gave it to my sellers and I gave it to my buyers and they kept it in their junk drawer. A lot of people have modified that. They put those on their website or they send it out in an email once, you know, or they have it in an email format in a PDF. But a lot of people really want reliable vendors and discounts and things like that. So make sure your sellers know that that's a value add because you guys are giving them some good quality vendors. And if the vendors screw up, don't give good pricing, don't good customer service, you gotta protect that list. You gotta take them off the list. And it's just gotta be that way. Ask for receipts, or make sure obviously your fiduciary is to get those, if your seller is making those repairs, to give them to the buyer's agent. So just kind of, again, get a folder started for them. Again, if it's a digital folder or a physical folder. And then prep your seller for the final walkthrough. Yes, they're not going to do the walkthrough, but you need to make sure that stuff is out and that the house is decently cleaned and the grass is mowed. So many times the buyer agents go out there and your seller still has a couch out there, or the grass is knee high, or it's filthy, right? So make sure you're doing a preparation for your sellers, because if not, I've been there. I've had to run over there and do it myself, or hire a lawn guy to cut the grass real quick, right? Anything again in your systems where you can send an email that says, "Hey, our walkthrough is Friday. My recommendation is you be out by Thursday. Remember, these items need to be really corrected." And again, not that sellers are liars, but you probably need to go check on it, right? Say, hey, I'm going to swing by tomorrow, make sure everything looks good prior to the walkthrough with the buyer. Is there any last minute things that you need me to help you with, right? No surprises. Make sure you tell them about keys and warranties. You guys know all that. That's pretty standard stuff. I want to make sure though, before the closing table, because the seller doesn't sign, you know, in an official capacity, kind of like a buyer, right? A buyer, they sit at the closing table, you give them the keys, you celebrate with a bottle of champagne. Like, that's great for a buyer, but a lot of times the sellers don't get that same experience, right? So what I would recommend is you having a celebratory opportunity with your seller, right? So is it a quick lunch? Is it a pop by at their office? Is it something like that? Because they don't have that same final finesse at the end of the transaction. A buyer does. You always guys, you know, I see you guys on social media putting on those posts on the just closed, but the seller doesn't have that experience. And the reason why I want you to think about that is I want you to recap that journey with them, right? I want you to say, can you believe it's been 60 days? When I met you guys, we had so much work to do, but you guys committed to, you know, fixing up the house. We got 20,000 over asking price. You guys are now kind of headed into the next chapter of your life, right? Make sure you're showing that. That's called future casting, where you showed them this is where we're at and this is what we got, how we got here. Because sometimes they don't remember all that hard work that you put into it. And they need to remember that, because that's what's going to cause them to refer you business. They were going to remember those efforts to go forward. And then make sure your marketing efforts, make sure you're really diligent about, in my opinion, telling the story about the human side of it. I see a lot of posts on social media and print material that says sold in 6 days, whatever. I'd rather you said, we help the Jones family transition to downsizing, or we help the Smith family relocate to Texas for a job transfer, and we wish them the best of luck, right? So it's again, it's that telling that story. There's many times, there's the final book I want you guys to consider looking at or reading. It's called Tribes, Tribes, Seth Godin. It's a great book, a super good book. And it says this, it says that in order for you guys to have a referral-based business, this is not a real estate book, but it completely connects with real estate, is that you have to, we're all humanly connected to the concept of a tribe. And a tribe needs two things. It needs a like-minded and a way to communicate with each other. Social media has been either a good and a bad example of that, depending on what topic you want to talk about with social media, right? But your tribe, the people that you are working with, the sellers that you're working with, want to tell your story. They know you're great at your job. They know you're a professional. They know that you priced it right, that you took the care and worked through all of the bumps, because nobody said working with a seller is easier, right? So I want you to remember that as you go through, right? Yes, we have the checklist. Yes, we have all the things that are going to keep us straight. But the final thing, I'm going to go to this last slide here, is that we need to make sure that you guys are allowing the story to be told. And I think reviews are a way to do that. My daughter is 15 years old. She doesn't buy a burrito without checking the daggone review on Yelp. We don't go into restaurants without seeing what type of customer service that we should expect at that restaurant, right? My wife and I went out to dinner in Richmond and we Googled that restaurant because we hadn't been there, right? That's what sellers do as well. You just don't know it, right? So if you Google right now, real estate agent Richmond, Virginia, I challenge you guys to do that on your phone. And I'll tell you, the number one person, the number one real estate agent, I'm not going to say the agent's name, has 344 reviews on his or her page. Google reviews. But if you look at that person's ranking in our MLS system, not even in the top 100 as far as closed volume. But who's telling the story louder? Him or the data? So what I would challenge you guys, this is ICON, this is a snapshot. You guys have 3 reviews as your brokerage. And they're 5-star, which is awesome. What could you guys do to tell your story better? What could you guys do as a brokerage to shout to the rooftops that if you're going to list your house, you should list with an ICON real estate agent? It's going to be through reviews, Facebook, and Google. You guys have already got it set up. If you Google ICON Realty, there's an icon that says, click here for a review. Maybe I don't know who's up here on the leadership, but I think maybe you guys could have a contest run around that, right? Every client that you close a property with, buyer, seller, I don't care, vendor, I don't care. Send them the Google review and then have them mention your name in it, right? But the more that you tell your story, the stronger your tribe gets. And this book is one of my most favorite books. I've mentioned it a ton of my trainings because we're humanistically built to connect with each other, to contribute to our community. And you guys are in the unique position as a real estate agent to do so by the listing agent. You remember day one, I said this. We are in the human business. You're the local economist of choice. And it starts with that connection to your community. So I would challenge you guys to go and tell your story in a way that you can do that. Make sure also you're claiming your listings on Zillow. Sellers and buyers don't automatically populate. When I onboard anybody that coaches with me, I look at their Zillow reviews. I look at their sales. I literally onboarded somebody and she had 26 sales and she had been in the business 10 years. I'm like, that's not good. None of her stuff was showing up. If I am a seller, I am going to choose an agent because of their reputation and their results, right? So make sure that stuff is accurate. Make sure your Zillow is accurate. Make sure your Google reviews are accurate. Make sure your social media reviews are up there. And then tell that story. That's the post that I would like for you guys to see. Tell it, if you post a testimonial about a seller that you helped, then they didn't think they were even possibly going to be able to sell the house and they got 20,000 more. That review is going to be powerful. So rather than you telling the story, the last part of this book says that tribes are about them telling your story rather than you. I think we are so nervous about getting listings because we don't know what to say or what to do or what questions to ask. Well, the silver bullet is don't. Let your consumer, let your clients do that for you. Let them do the heavy lifting. And you know what? They're happy to do it because our tribe mentality is we want to contribute to make everybody better as humans. And so how cool would it be to have a past seller say, you know, Erica did an amazing job of listing my property. We got it 20,000 over asking, and she made our family really the process an easy process for us. Who wouldn't want to list with Erica after that, right? You're not saying it, your clients are. So I would say when you're going to that final kind of step in the process, it goes back to making sure your database is clean, make sure that you are constantly communicating with them. And make sure that they're telling their story. I recommend having a closed Facebook group, like a VIP fan page. If you're a member with us in my coaching, I have a separate fan page. I give stuff away every week. Coffee mugs, shirts, whatever. They're $5, $10. You know what I'm doing is I'm building my tribe. I'm building my community because they are of like mind and they want to communicate the same way I want to do. You probably have heard of pop buys. That's a Buffini thing. I think gratitude gifts. It's a different spin. I use the same boxes that I used on that pre-listing package, the one I told you yesterday. I use those boxes and deliver those VIP gifts. Not everyone gets a pop buy. Only my best clients get VIP gifts. They get a special box that makes them feel important. And yeah, inside it's still the pop buy, but it's got crinkly stuff. It's got a pretty bow around it and it's sitting on the front door like a Christmas present, right? And I know that they feel special and anything I can do to make them feel important is going to allow me to get more referrals. So I love pop buys, but I think they've gotten watered down. I think there's so many using the Buffini system. I love Brian Buffini, but it's time to put a little facelift on it. Give it a little love. Give it a little bit more care for your VIP clients and everything. And the last thing I want to end with, as we were talking about this, is acquiring a new customer costs 5 times more than an existing client. We're spending money on Zillow ads and we're spending money on boosting Facebook ads. What if we spent just $2 more on each one of our clients in our database? What if we sent them birthday cards? What if we dropped off a little gift because they had a grandbaby, right? Or they got a new puppy? What if we spent more time on building systems on how to build relationships? That's what gets listings, right? Not buying more Zillow leads and boosting a Facebook ad. And so one of the things I would challenge you to do is come up with a system. One of the systems that we coach to is to connect with them, text message, email, or call. And we pick 2 letters of the alphabet every week. And we start this every quarter. So April 1st, this is on page 41. All the coaching clients that I will start again on April 1st. So you're right in time. That starts on next Thursday. Look at the calendar. Next Thursday, we're going to start with anybody with a last name is the letter with the N and Y. And we're going to go through our phone, we go through our Facebook, and we go through our database, and we touch those people. What I mean by touch is we're just connecting with them, right? We're going to say, wow, I saw you went to Disney World. Hope things are well, right? Wow, I saw whatever it is. But it's simple. So what I recommend is printing this piece of paper that's in your workbook, posting it, and pick the letter. And maybe you are off a week, maybe you're sick, maybe you go on vacation. All right, well then pick up where you left back off. But if you did 2 letters of the alphabet for 3 months, you get through all 26 letters of the alphabet. That's 13 weeks of connections. That's how you build a business by referral. That's how you build a listing-based business. And then sending things of value but that are automated. So I don't know if you've heard of Reminder Media. They send these beautiful magazines. They're beautiful, right? Can somebody send those? So they're like $3 or $4 a piece. And I wouldn't recommend them sending them to your B clients. They are their A, VIP clients, right? So I have a client that sends me theirs. She picks the health version of it. They have a health. American Lifestyle is more of the house tips. Every month, I get this, right? And guess what? Her information is right inside. You can't see. Yeah, you can see it. Her info's there. Her picture's on the cover. What if you gave your VIP this? Yes, they're $3 or $4, but guess what? These are something that they put on their coffee table. They put in the bathroom. Let's keep it real, right? But you're there, you're a member. This is also on the right-hand side of the screen is a customized newsletter. This is from Canva. You can literally Google, go into Canva, create a simple 2-page newsletter. I'll tell you, when I've literally got started, that's the first thing I did, was I would do a newsletter every month. And at first, I didn't even have the money to print it in color. I printed it black and white, and I folded it and put it in an envelope, and I mailed it to my top 100 people. And my daughter, Emma, would help me fold them. But every month, about the 15th of the month, I would mail out these newsletters. And my clients still to this day do that, and they get listings from it. So 2 tips on that is make it sticky. What I mean by that is put something that makes them not throw it away. So lean into your vendors. Let's say this month you call one of your landscapers and says, hey, I want to spotlight you on my monthly newsletter. And I wanted to know if you would give a little discount for anybody that calls you. You know, even if it was $20 off their mulch landscaping, right? So I'm going to create a coupon on my newsletter that says, if you work with John Smith from Landscaping XYZ Company, you get $10 off. Just mention this newsletter to him on the phone, right? You're creating like a business card size ad on that newsletter. People won't throw that away. They'll at least stick it in the drawer, put it on the refrigerator, right? You do stuff that's sticky. Right? Giving them updated statistics, yes, you need to do it, but you got to put stuff in there that makes them not look at it for 2 seconds and throw it in the trash. Think logically. Think about, I did 4th of July. One of the biggest ones is like, where are fireworks for 4th of July? We created a list. Easter egg hunt, right? I would get ahead of that, and there was a church locally that did like a helicopter one where they dropped all the Easter eggs. I put that on there. People aren't going to throw that away because they want to know where that is. And the last thing is I'm going to give you just some tips and tricks that I use. Personalized handwritten notes. I love a handwritten note, but there is an app called Ink, A-I-N-K app, and it's showed on the screen. What I do is I stalk Facebook, and I see one of my friends got a new puppy. Actually, I had the most recent one a few months ago. She has horses, and it had snowed. And the horses were like in the field, and she posted this beautiful picture of her babies, which are her horses. I saved the photo of the horse, and I went on the Ink Card app, and the outside of the card was her babies, her horses. And on the other side of that card was, I saw this on Facebook. It made me smile. I think this is something that you should frame. or should keep it in your office to make you remember how life is beautiful. I hope you're having a great day. She texted me with a photo of it and said, oh my God, I've never received such an amazing card. I'm going to keep it forever, right? I don't know if she will. I mailed one the other day to a guy with his puppy because it was National Puppy Day, right? He's like, oh my God, this is great. They're not going to throw that thank you note away. And if they flip it over, my contact information is on the other side. They're a couple bucks. And the cool thing is they mail it out for you. So if you don't have stamps, don't worry about it. It's $2. Apple Pay. Ding, ding. Quick. Birthdays. There's an app called the Birthday app. It's on the right-hand side. It connects with your social media Facebook. It reminds you whose birthdays are when. So you know what I do when I go to Target? I pull up the app or Walmart or the dollar store and I buy cards. And I go, oh, this month I need to buy 6 cards because my database, my Facebook friends are that. How cool would it be if they actually got a physical card from you rather than you just posting on their timeline? And then Ritz-Carlton has what they call a wow gift. They always want to make sure their clients are excited about things. You can set up a USPS.com package system. So let's say you bought something, they had a new baby. You can print it off, a label that's like the UPS brand, duct tape it to the box, and you just drop it off at the UPS or FedEx store. You don't even have to wait in line. You just drop it because you prepay through USPS.com. We want to make things easy, right? It's the intention, but it's the action that connects you to the people, right? And we talked about that vendor directory. So it's all about staying in relationship with those clients, past clients, future clients, and hopefully those give you strategies to do so. So that's kind of the end of the 2-day extravaganza for you selling as a listing ninja. I do want to remind you that I'll be sending you an email about a survey about how we did on this training. And I don't want you to sugarcoat it. I want you to tell us the good, the bad, and the ugly, and maybe some of the good. And you'll be entered to win for a $100 Visa gift card. So I'll be sending that out later today. It also is going to give you access to both of the recordings from today and tomorrow, yesterday. So if you need to review any of those recordings, if there's something that you maybe missed or didn't write down correctly, and of course the workbooks. But implementation is the key to this whole thing. You spent 4 hours of your life with me, which I'm super grateful for. But it is about taking what was in this workbook, what you highlighted, what you thought was this great idea and putting into action. Because I've learned a lot of things that stayed in a book on a shelf and never got executed in my business. And that's probably one of the regrets I have as a real estate agent is I just didn't go into action. So I would recommend you having accountability towards that. Tell your broker, tell your mentor, tell a peer in your brokerage, hey, I want to implement these 3 things in the next 48 hours. Can you help me, hold me accountable to that? Because we know as soon as the Zoom is over, you're going to be running, taking care of kids. You're going to go grab some food. And life will get caught back up, and you'll forget some of the things we discussed today and yesterday, right? Well, anything else you guys want to go over? I'll hang out for a few minutes. Otherwise, I value your time. And I wish you guys a great success. I expect a lot more ICON for sale signs in the yards, right? You guys are gonna take market share, you're gonna take over, and you're gonna be listing ninjas because that's where the business is. That's the listing leads leverage part of your business. I'm excited to see all of you.
Dwayne the Ninja.
Yeah, I like it. So thank you so much. And if there's anything else, I'll hang out for a little bit more. Otherwise, you guys can hop off, have a great day. And I hope I can do more training with you guys. I think this is our first official one with ICON. And we'll love to talk to you guys and your leadership about doing some future trainings. So if I did a halfway decent job, tell your leadership you want me back. All right?
Drew, you're going to be sending us the free listing package and the Canva, the free booklet thing.
I'm sending you the pre-list and the listings. You're going to get an email with, it's going to be one email. So it's going to be both of those links to the Canva, the recordings, and the survey. Okay. And I'm going to send you inside that same email a Google and a Facebook review because that's how we tell our story and build our tribe. So it's
this has been awesome, and you have been a great facilitator.
Appreciate that. Hopefully we can do it in person soon. I haven't been to your office, but it looks beautiful from social media photos. So hopefully we'll be able to do it in person soon.
Drew, can
Yeah.
you give us your individual costs as to what you charge to do individual? I know with Zillow, and I know we don't want to hold anybody up, but I can ask you a question once you release everybody.
So our coaching, I coach a limited number of people because it's just me and I want to provide good service. So I've got 4 open spots for personal coaching, and I charge $500 or $700 a month based on what services you'll need, and we can kind of break that down. And it's a 3-month contract, so it's $500 or $700 for me to personally coach you. And then if you want to have trainings, the trainings are $49 a piece, or a workshop like this is $89 a person.
Got it.
Do you,
Thank you.
Can I piggyback on that? Because I was going to ask specifically to, I think Marlene and I both are kind of on the same page as far as like the tasks that are involved with, executing some of the things that you have us to do. It's kind of, we need to kind of task it out or get help. Do you have a trainer that kind of helps you to know what direction to go in when it comes to needing to employ, a small team or an administrator, somebody to kind of help take some of this off so it can actually get done so the business can grow and you're not 500 people in one day, you know?
Well, so we just developed a team training. I coach 4 large teams. Actually, I have a team that has 10 people on his team right now. And so we just developed out a team training module. So that'll be $89, and I'm happy to invite you. I think we're going to do that in April. But yeah, a lot of it's leverage. I'll tell you, I have a lot of people that do a lot of the things I tell you to do. So I know you're not Superman and Superwoman and you have 24 hours a day just working. You have to feed your family and do the other things. So I'm happy to talk about doing a small group, 6, 7 of you. If you guys want to build out some leverage, I'm happy to do another training on that. If you want to just do a one-on-one, that's usually what is encompassed in a regular coaching session. We kind of break it apart. I coach, that's $695 a month is what I charge to do that. And we do 2 1-hour sessions a month. And
Right.
Down. So it's cheaper to do it in a group training because it'd be $89 a person. But if you want more one-on-one, me really molding your business, that would be probably more of a coaching experience. And again, it's just a 3-month minimum, which nobody really breaks up with me after 3 months, but hey, at least it doesn't have that year commitment feel.
Well, for me, I know I probably want to start in the group workshop, to get some of this stuff in place. And then I could probably go to one-on-one. But what I don't want to happen is what you said, that I have all these great ideas and I just can't get around to them. So I'm kind of spinning my wheels. But I don't know how to go about bringing somebody in and how to train them on the what to do, or even finding good help. You know what I mean?
Yep. We go over that. We go over how to, work on an Indeed ad. We go over having them do a DISC assessment to see if we're hiring the right personality profile for your organization. I have employment agreements that we offer. We have team agreements that you can review because we want to make sure you're running it like a business. You're not just hiring your mom randomly. So yeah, we can do all of those things either in a training capacity where it's just going to give you general knowledge and resources, or we can go really deep one-on-one with that coaching. So yeah, we can definitely do that. So maybe we'll connect. We want to connect online. If we can get, as long as we get 3 or 4 people, I think we'd be fine. Again, if it's a small enough group, we could probably even meet one-on-one.
I'm wondering, is Marlene still on? Because I know she asked.
Yeah, I'm still on. And I really, a lot of this I'm doing, but it's kind of scattered. Not a lot, but some of it I'm doing, but it's kind of scattered. I really need something to put all of my systems in place. And just like with Zillow, I went on there and did my Zillow before, but of course I haven't gone on there in 6 months because there's so much information you have to put in. So I just really need to get some systems in place, and that way it becomes systematic. So that's my big thing, is having a system in place.
Well, I will tell you the biggest system is accountability, to be honest.
Yeah,
it's me going, so what I do with all my high producers is we have a plan, and I go over the plan every month. Well, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? And they're like, crap, no, I didn't do that, right? Okay, well then let's get that done or delegate it out. So I have a coaching prep form that keeps us in alignment. And I also have what I call a GPS, which is a plan each quarter. And we'd say, did you do it? Did you not do it? And so, because you have these great ideas and then you start
You
them,
drop them.
and then
Yeah.
you drop them. So
Yeah.
it's just keeping your pulse and you're busy. I mean, real estate, I mean, I know, like 1 minute you're going left, the next minute you're going right. I get the beast that the business is, but you're probably either going to need to put a physical person, an admin there, or an accountability partner.
That's definitely a must. Yeah.
So
I'm bringing my, yeah.
thank you for your time. And if you need anything else, talk to me privately. We'll make it happen. And like I said, I'd love to work with you guys in the future. You guys are amazing. I coach a lot of over 16 brokerages I've coached in Richmond, and you guys, highest energy, very articulate, ask some amazing questions. So Tina and her crew have done an amazing job with you guys. So I hope to see you guys at a next training session with me. Okay.
The team is
Absolutely.
amazing.
Thank you, Drew.
Call me Tunji. Thanks.
Okay.
Bye, everybody. Bye.